way, what does rolling without ego really mean in a practical sense?
Well, it's kind of being less attached to outcome and kind of relaxing into the moment. When we roll, sometimes we get attached to like, I have to tap them. Worse is I have to tap them with a specific technique, right? Then you start forcing things and offering a lot of resistance. An old Japanese jiu-jitsu style that I trained, they had a no challenge, no resistance, no injury as the basis of their philosophy. If you're not challenging, you're just kind of flowing with it. No resistance, you're not getting what you want. No, I want what I want. You oppose, and then you direct energy in the opposite direction. And then no injury, you can avoid injury. If we think about when do we get injured, it's usually when like somebody changes the tempo really quickly. We're kind of flowing along and then somebody, boom, they explode. Why are they exploding? Because they are attached to the outcome. I have to finish this. This is my opportunity. Boom. Especially beginning jiu-jitsu students, they get a fixation. That kind of fixation can get you into trouble when you're rolling because you're just too attached. You're not afraid to let things go and flow.
Welcome back to the BJJ Fanatics podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Ford. My guest today is a 4th degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He's also a black belt in Judo. He's also a 1st degree black belt in Aikido and a 3rd degree black belt in Japanese Jiu-Jitsu. He's a highly respected instructor, and he's been producing excellent instructional content for the BJJ community for many years. He's also author of 2 books, The Martial Apprentice and Becoming the Black Belt. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to be joined for the 4th time on the show by Professor Roy Dean. How are you today, Roy?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on, Ryan.
Of course, Roy, it's always a pleasure having you here. You always give great insight and content when you're on the show. So I appreciate you coming back for the 4th time. Roy, I know you're just coming off the road. You're home now for the moment. I know you're going to be traveling again soon. You live a really cool nomadic lifestyle with the way you teach and travel and do seminars. Where were you coming back from? There was a couple places you visited recently. Catch us up with what you've been up to.
Yeah. So just last week, I was at Grapplers Retreat, which is in Northern California, Mendocino. And that is it's really, I feel like it's kind of the premier jiu-jitsu retreat happening right now in our community. I've done many retreats all over the place, but there's something special about Grapplers Retreat. It is purposely built just for grappling, although they can host other things there and they're experimenting with yoga and breath work, but it's really designed for grapplers. And the facility is beautiful. They have individual cabins that you can rent, or you can be in kind of a larger dorm facility where everyone has their own bedroom. They have a hot tub in the redwoods. They have a sauna. They have gourmet meals. They have a full-time staff to help people out, give them orientations, to cook all the food, to clean everything. So it's really going like to a luxury vacation for 1 week, and then participating and actually getting to know some of these world-class instructors. Hodger does about 4 camps there a year, Hodger Gracie. Shanji recently did a camp there, Henry Akins. There's a ton of people. My own black belt, Rick Ellis, did a WISE Grapplers Retreat, over 40. So there's a lot of, and many other incredible instructors. So for those that are looking for kind of a very safe, upscale getaway experience, I couldn't recommend it highly enough. I took one of my black belts, Ben Dyson. We've been teaching this for the last 4 years, doing it together. I do the gi portion. He does the no gi portion. We picked him up in San Francisco. He flew down from Vancouver, British Columbia, and I picked him up in SFO. We drove up to Mendocino. It's about almost a 4-hour drive. So you're really up there. You feel kind of isolated, but not fully, and it's just about 2 miles in from the coast. So even people that aren't participating in the retreat, say they're a plus one, if they're like the wife of somebody who does train and they don't train, you can still access the town of Mendocino. It's very historic. It's very quaint, and get a little bit of that Northern California experience and experience the coastline, which is dramatic and beautiful. So it's yeah, it's really it's a great time. And people that experience it, like, you can see it on the website, but there's nothing like being there in person. It's like watching jujitsu. It looks cool, it looks intense, but once you experience it for yourself, you realize, whoa, there's a lot more here. It doesn't really capture the depth and beauty of the experience.
Wow, that really is incredible. Man, that sounds like something pretty awesome for people that are able to get out to it. I'll definitely be looking into that myself. That sounds like a lot of
Mhm.
fun. Roy, another place that you've been recently is my dream destination. They're the number one place on my bucket list. You were in Japan. What was that trip like, and how long were you there for?
Oh my God, this is something that I was really looking forward to, because as some people may know if they've been following me, I was sent to Japan as an exchange student, and that's how I really got my start in martial arts. I was sent there as at 16, studied judo, received my first degree black belt through competition, came back to the States, and then just kept going. But I hadn't been back to Japan in 30 years, over 30 years, 34 years really. So going there with my friend Nick Gregoriadis, he did a retreat called the Musashi Experience. So I did a little bit of a seminar tour in Europe. I went to Wales, did the Matador app camp, teaching with Dean Lister and some other great instructors there. Then I went to Norway for my normal thing, did 2 seminars at my affiliate in Christiansand, hit up another affiliate in Holland, in Breda, the Netherlands. And then at the end of that, I got a little reward by going on this trip where I wasn't teaching. I was just along for the ride. So Nick Gregoriadis, those that aren't familiar, he is Hodger's first black belt. And he's doing something really cool. He teamed with a man named Max Whittle, and Max Whittle is a PhD, and he has a breathwork system that he does. And of all the different breathwork systems I've experienced, holotropic breathwork, Wim Hof, this is really, I would say, the most comprehensive and probably the best breathwork system, because it kind of warms you up, and then yeah, and he really understands the underlying physiology on why the breathwork is important and how it can change your body. So he outlined all those benefits. We did a ton of different breathwork sessions in different areas of Japan. Um, and the jujitsu was part of it, but jujitsu was kind of the minor part of this tour. So we went to like the Imperial Gardens in Tokyo. We went to the Kodokan, which
Yeah,
was like that's the bucket list item, right? For me,
that's a must. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, the Kodokan. So they arranged for a private lesson in the Kodokan with a with 6 degree black belt, a red and a coral belt, red and white belt, named Shimoyama Sensei. And Shimoyama Sensei gave our group a private lesson. I thought we'd be in a small room in the back or somewhere. No, we actually had the main training hall. And going there, of course, we're in a rented uniform, and I'm a Shodan, first degree black belt in judo, but I was like, nah, I'm not going to make a big deal of it and just put on the white belt, because everyone had to have rented gis, no patches, nothing. So they provide the gis, they provide the belts. We went there, and Nick had put in a request for ashiwaza, so foot sweeps and leg techniques. So we got on the mat, bowed in. He gave us a. I'm just about to publish a YouTube video, or like a beautiful YouTube video, that showed what we went over, and it has really dynamic footage of him doing throws, etc., with high speed cameras and all of that, because there was a film crew with us at the same time for this trip. So he did a. It was an incredible lesson. It was really great. He we bowed in. He gave us a history lecture on the development of judo and how it's a composite system from these different jujitsu ryu or styles from back in the day, how Kano preserved them in both, and revolutionize the training method, taking away the most lethal techniques, and so you could do kind of more of the, I wouldn't say sport techniques, but you can apply full force into doing these techniques, which makes them far more effective. So training method over technique, and that was great. Then we did a warm up. He demonstrated various throws and how judo categorizes them: ashiwaza, leg techniques, hand techniques, hip techniques, sacrifice throws. Then he gave us like a physics demonstration on like the box of balance and how people are weak when you pull people just outside of that box. He even had the uke wear like a belt with a string and a ball so you could see like their center of gravity and where it shifted. And then we did a few techniques, and then we ended the class, and it was beautiful. It was beautiful. And um I love Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but there was something pure about going back to Kodokan Judo, um, the principles that they talked about. I mean, it's such a thoughtful system, and being able to experience it there. I tell you, dude, I got a little teary eyed. I was like, I got on the mat. I'm looking at Jigoro Kano's chair and table that he used to sit at and watch while practice was going on. And I'm like, there's no way I would be able to do what I'm doing teaching jujitsu professionally around the world. There is no way. I trace directly back to that lineage and what he started, the educational system that he founded. There's a direct line. I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing and have this incredible life without what he did. And then for it to come full circle like that, it was a moment, man. It was a moment in my martial arts journey.
Oh, I can only imagine. I mean, yeah, we all trace our roots back to there originally. That's one of the reasons it's been such a huge destination on my list for so long, just because it really is the birthplace of so many different martial arts, and especially for jujitsu guys, that's where it all came from originally. So, man, how cool that you went with Nick too. Nick is such a good guy, man.
Oh
He's an
my God.
awesome person. So it must have been a cool travel companion to have, especially on that
Yeah,
kind of trip. Yeah.
definitely. Yeah. So there were probably 14 people in the group plus a film crew um, that came over from Europe. And so I'm just about to release some of that footage. The footage is epic. I like to take footage too of my journeys, but once I saw the quality of the footage they were doing, I was like, I'm going to put my phone away. I'm going to put my camera away and just let the pros handle it. So, so yeah, it was that was pretty incredible. And then we continued. So we went to Nagano, which is kind of a northern area of Japan, still on Honshu, the main island. And we went to we just kind of explored the mountain regions. Then we went to Kyoto, finished up there. It was a beautiful experience. A lot of breath work, some jujitsu. Nick taught a variety of classes, and one of the spots we did a dojo up in Nagano, but then we also in Kyoto we went to the Kyoto Budo Center. So the Kyoto Budo Center is a really old and historic dojo, not just for judo or jujitsu or any of that. It was, I mean, it looked like it was described as like, okay, this is like the Matrix, like, in the fighting training scenes in the Matrix, like the old style dojo. So we went there and it was true. I mean, it looks like it was built hundreds of years ago. They have a place for the emperor, and the custodian was like, do not turn your back. It was like a red velvet rope, like, with a chair and a table, and it's like, do not turn your back to where the emperor may sit. Obviously he wasn't there, but it's still mindful, respectful of that he might be, and he might come at any moment to observe his warriors. So we went there and did that training. We weren't allowed to publish any photographs or videos that we're taking inside.
Oh, wow.
It's still kind of a sacred space for them. And then after we were finished, kids started rolling in. Kids that were doing they were doing kendo. So they come in with their little shinai and they're like, "Rah, rah," in the uniforms. Then they had Kyudo, which is Japanese archery. And that was
Oh,
taken by and placed nearby. And it was just like, it's really the full Budo experience. It was a fantastic trip, action packed, but a great trip, and I highly recommend it for anybody who would want to explore Japan and see more than just the kind of the obvious places where you would go. They found non-obvious restaurants. They found non-obvious destinations where there weren't a ton of tourists. In fact, there were no tourists. We did this hike in the mountains of Nagano to this temple. There was nobody. We saw nobody there, and it took like 90 minutes to go up these stone steps, and the oxygen up there was incredible. It was just like we did some breath work and we could hold our breath. I was like, this is amazing. Compared to Tokyo, which is obviously more polluted and at a lower elevation, I could hold my breath for maybe a minute or something, or 45 seconds. But up there, it seemed like there was no limit. I was like, man, I could keep going. I could keep holding my breath. Just kind of the purity of that destination. It was really, there are some things that I really took with me from that trip. So it's funny how travel does that. Sometimes you go and you see things and experience things, but sometimes you take that with you when you get back home.
that is incredible, man. It sounds like you guys did exactly what I've always dreamed of doing in Japan. I've always said if I want to go for like 2 weeks, spend a week in Tokyo and then a week out in the mountains somewhere much further out where you see more
Mm-hmm.
traditional scenery and lifestyle. Um, I think one of the two big destinations for me in the city would be obviously the Kodokan. That's a must. And then for
Mm-hmm.
me also Saitama Super Arena where pride fighting used to be held. That's like,
Yes.
for me, that's like a mecca of MMA. I would have to go, and just even if there was nothing going on MMA related, I would just want to be able to walk through the halls and see the arena where all those legendary Pride events took place, because that was my favorite time period in MMA.
Oh my
So
God, there's nothing like Pride. Actually saw someone the other day wearing a Pride t-shirt, and I rarely wear printed, Origin, because, they've sponsored
sure,
me for
sure,
forever.
yeah,
But I saw a guy wearing a Pride shirt and I was like, dang, I want that.
I
I,
gotta get one. Yeah, I gotta
I
get
got to
one.
get one of those. Art history, man.
Well, I also appreciate what you said too about finding places that are off the beaten path. That's one thing when we do travel around. I prefer not to stay on resorts and things like that because it just kind of feels like I don't know. It feels like I'm in this like pre-constructed place that's not not the real experience of going to a different place. Like I'd like to stay in places that are not the obvious places. Like you said. You said that perfectly, actually.
Yeah, that is so true. I a couple years ago I had that experience. Every year I go to Costa Rica, to Tamarindo, Costa Rica.
You're going again soon too, aren't you?
I'll go in November. I'm going to do a camp there. Um, it's like a 4-day camp with Hero Academy, and when you're in Tamarindo, it's like they have a really cool international food scene. It's cool. It's touristy, but it's the real thing. There's a flavor. And then a few years ago, we staged ourselves to catch the flight back to the U.S. in Liberia, where we stayed at like a high end Marriott or whatever, some kind of fancy Marriott. And it was soulless, I have to say, like just what you're describing, soulless. They manufactured a little section of beach, and it was just lame. It was just so lame. And there were people, there was some kind of like body work fitness thing, and I saw all these kind of fitness influencers there, and I just thought, man, you guys are missing out. You're here, but you're not really here.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's kind of how I've always felt too about like cruises. Like I know some people that love cruises, and listen, if you like
Mhm.
cruises, I'm not knocking anything. Obviously,
Yeah,
take your
yeah,
vacation how you want to do. But I always feel like, man, I'm kind of feel like I'm just floating on a mall right now. Like I'm in a mall that's on the sea. You know what I
yeah.
mean?
Oh my,
For me, it's just not quite what I'm looking for personally. I'd like to be like in a place where I'm, outside the realms of a resort or a touristy kind of trap. I like to get out there and feel the real life of a different place.
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. No, that's the heart of it.
So when you go to Costa Rica in November, you're doing this thing with Hero Academy. It's actually it's a really cool thing those guys are doing. I'm familiar with Hero Academy and what they do, but for the people that are not, would you mind telling us what the purpose of Hero Academy is? And yeah,
Yeah, certainly. So Hero Academy, they're a nonprofit. They do something really cool for the local children. So Ron Jarman spearheads it. He moved to Costa Rica from Chicago with his wife years ago, and he was attending this academy, and then the instructor had to leave, so he inherited it as a brown belt, and he subsequently gotten his black belt. But he realized, man, this is, he understands the power of jujitsu. So he started inviting instructors to go down there. He would organize everything. Um, and he splits the proceeds with the local children. So the local children never have to pay for training, never have to pay for a rash guard, never have to pay for a uniform.
it's incredible.
And so he pays their instructors, the facility, all the staff from the proceeds from these monthly or the bi-month or like, yeah, bi-monthly. So some occasionally there's like 2 seminars a month down there. And it's just a good vibe. Like you see the kids, it's a taste of a different kind of life. It's beautiful, and last time they usually put us in a Hyatt overlooking the ocean. It feels tropical and exotic, and it's just a good time, and everyone is there for the right reasons. It's wonderful. It's one of the highlights, and especially as temperatures drop here in the US in November, like some people experience snow, it's nice to get away for a little dose of vitamin D.
Yeah, not a bad place to be at all, for sure. Yeah, and Roy, we were talking off air right before we started this interview, and I was just telling you, man, I think it's so cool the time that we're in right now, where someone like yourself could really live this nomadic kind of lifestyle, teaching and traveling. I think before, like traditionally, when you think about being a black belt and having a school or being a full-time teacher, you think of, okay, I'm going to be in a location, I'll pick a location, I'll have a brick and mortar school, I'll be there from morning until close, day in, day out for years and years. But we are in a really cool place now where the possibilities of teaching online and, doing seminars all over the world and being part of things like Hero Academy and Grapplers Retreat, that is a reality now. It's cool that people don't necessarily have to be stuck to one location if they don't want to. There's lots of opportunity out there for people to be kind of free roaming with their jujitsu teaching.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's like jujitsu lifestyle. Some people really embrace. I have a home base here in Palm Desert, California, and then I also spend time with family up in Anchorage, Alaska. But the opportunity to travel, to experience other parts of the world, become an international citizen, it really, I mean, like, it reinforces, hey, I am an international citizen. I come from America. I am an American, but there's a whole world out there outside of the American media ecosystem. There are different ways to live, and ultimately we're all the same. We all have the same issues, same wants, needs, different languages, maybe different political systems, but essentially we have so much more in common, and uh, than any differences that we might have. So that is, that gets driven home every time I travel. And I think it's a miracle. I mean, occasionally I think, don't complain about the 11-hour flight, Roy. You could have been on a ship a couple hundred years ago.
Yeah, yeah, right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Or
And
like
that
a
is
horse-drawn carriage or something. Yeah.
just exactly clop, clop. Are we there yet?
Oregon
Uh,
Trail, get dysentery. Yeah.
there's, there's so much. And, I'm working on a really exciting project. I don't want to give too much away, but I'm working on a really exciting project where we're interviewing some jujitsu masters
Oh,
and like first generation jujitsu masters. And I had the very good fortune of interviewing Steve Maxwell the other day. Steve Maxwell is an OG, right?
yeah.
He opened the first Gracie, certified training center as a purple belt in Philadelphia, Maxercise. So many. Pedro Sauer was there perhaps before him promoting people, but he and Pedro Sauer were like East Coast innovators brought the art out to the East Coast, and so many schools, from the Miglerese brothers to Jared Weiner to all these, like, all come from Maxercise. And of course, he's a wealth of information about fitness. I mean, he's done it all. He's been on JRE like a million times. And he lived that nomadic lifestyle. I mean, he really lived it. I have a home base, and I go and do my things, but come back. But he lived that nomadic lifestyle for 14 years. And really did. He had one bag. It's such an amazing and kind of admirable thing. He said he got burnt out after a while. Eventually you need a home base, and now he's based out of Everett, Washington. But the ability to have one bag, like true minimalism, you have one bag, and you get something new, something's got to go out, and it's that kind of like back to basics approach. Really, it's something that I kind of aspire towards, yet I'm not ready for that yet.
Yeah.
That's another.
That's hardcore. Yeah. That is awesome. Yeah. Steve's awesome. Steve was actually one of my very early guests I had on. Actually, this year's 10 years I've been doing the show now. And
Congratulations.
Thank you, man. Yeah. But he was one of the, I was thinking like the first year he was on the show, and he was talking about all the kettlebell stuff he does. And he's actually the guy that turned me on to using kettlebells in the first place. We talked about how it's such a great dynamic exercise specifically for jiu-jitsu too. And, yeah, he had the same nomadic kind of lifestyle at the time too. So yeah, really interesting, man. Roy, last time you were on the show, we had a pretty deep conversation about technique. Today, I want to go in a slightly different direction, if you don't mind. I want to talk about the ever-present ego that exists in jiu-jitsu. It's a topic that gets covered a lot, but you've had some really interesting things to say about the ego in the past. So I'd like to pick your brain on that today, if you don't mind.
Absolutely, would love to talk.
Roy, what does rolling without ego really mean in a practical sense?
Well, it's kind of being less attached to outcome and more and kind of relaxing into the moment. I've gotten some really great insights into being in the present moment and addressing your ego through like Zen Buddhism. Cool. So I went to a monastery and talked with this female monk, and she said, it's always good to ask yourself, what's happening now? Right? What's happening now? Okay, I'm on this podcast with you. You just kind of like, it brings you back to what is occurring right in front of me. And I think when we roll, sometimes we get attached to like, I have to tap them. Worse is I have to tap them with a specific technique, right? Then you start forcing things and offering a lot of resistance. An old Japanese jiu-jitsu style that I trained, they had a no challenge, no resistance, no injury as the basis of their philosophy. No challenge, no resistance, no injury. If you're not challenging, you're just kind of flowing with it. No resistance, you're not getting what you want. No, I want what I want. You oppose, and then you direct energy in the opposite direction. And then no injury, you can avoid injury. If we think about when do we get injured, it's usually when like somebody changes the tempo really quickly. We're kind of flowing along, and then somebody, boom, they explode. Why are they exploding? Because they are attached to the outcome. I have to finish this. This is my opportunity. Boom. Sometimes it's good. It's nice to be able to be goal oriented and be able to put all your energy and channel your energy. Minimum effort, maximum efficiency. That's what we're striving for in the old judo maxim. But when it comes to like, especially beginning jiu-jitsu students, they get a fixation. Ooh, I have this grip. This grip is good. The grip may be good, but it's not always good. The grip may be good, and then they change their position. The grip isn't great now. You need to be able to let that go. Some people hold on to stuff like taking a footlock. It's great if you fall back into a footlock and have good position. But if the guy clears your ankle, stands up, now he's basically mounting you and you're still holding on, No, that time is gone. You need to recognize, where are you now? What's happening now? Right. So that kind of fixation can get you into trouble when you're rolling, because you're just too attached. You're not afraid to let things go and flow. I was just talking with Ben Dyson, who's, probably my most talented athletic black belt I've ever produced. Um, he won ADCC European trials. I mean, he's a monster. And his thing was, sometimes we were just talking, sometimes it's better when you aren't trying so hard, because something that is like almost good, like almost a submission, you might force it. You're like, oh, sometimes you do want to massage like a good position into something a little bit better, but sometimes you're 95% of the way to the submission, then they block you, they thwart you. If you're really in the moment, you'll just let that go and have the confidence to say, no, something better will come along. And something better will come along because you're at a level of awareness and skill where you can capitalize on something. And then when that thing comes along, sometimes it just works out. You're like, oh my God, he just came in and I hit the darce, and that was it. And the next one that you hit is actually effortless, where the one that you almost got, you would have had to put a lot of energy into it. Right. So sometimes when you can let go and just be in the moment and have the confidence to say, no, I'll get the next thing. You can flow a lot better. You recognize that there are going to be other opportunities, and you can kind of keep your ego at a minimum in the role. You're just looking for the best possible outcome. You're not necessarily looking to enforce your will on somebody else. Talking to Pedro Sauer, just had this incredible interview with Pedro Sauer for that same project. We did that yesterday or 2 days ago, and he was saying that the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu self-defense, that's really the magic in it lies from not trying to inflict your will on someone else. You're not trying to tap the person. You're trying to extract yourself from a situation. There's no ego in it. They're trying to do something to you. You're not trying to do something to them. You're just trying to undo what they did to you. You're trying to put them in a compromised position with a couple of moves and moving off the line of attack to a specific vector. It's not about you winning. It's about you just being safe and being able to read what they're going to do earlier and earlier in the equation. His insight into the self-defense curriculum, I mean, he was saying that's really the heart of jiu-jitsu, because there's no emotion attached. Am I good in being able to do this self-defense technique? Am I not? Am I not a man? Am I getting better? That guy tapped me out, now I have to get him back? There's none of that. And so I think being able to, experience the art without that goal of ego reinforcement, or enforcing your will, or showing that you're dominant. I think that's very powerful, and we should approach the art in all kinds of ways. It's important to know how to do what you want to do, but don't get fixated on a particular outcome.
Yeah, that's tremendous advice. I think that when you let go and you're having fun and you're being light with things, they always say play, like just make it playful, play jujitsu. And that's when you have the most fun. When you have the most fun, you typically improve the best. So ironically, when you're trying to like win and impose your will, like you're describing, you don't always advance as fast as if you're just having a good time and it's something that you really take pleasure in. So ironically, you end up being more badass by just flowing with things and being light and playful and fun with it, versus being real, gritting your teeth and pushing through things and chasing after things that may not be completely there. So it's kind of an interesting dynamic in the way.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. That reminds me of another thing Mr. Harris said long ago. It was actually in regards to Kali, but he said that the order of operations was basically effectiveness, efficiency, playfulness. Playfulness is the highest order of martial arts, And yeah, we all want to be effective. We've got to get that. But once you become effective, then I got to get better. You're working on the efficiency. And then we can let it go and become playful. And that's where the joy, the real skill, manifests in transforming, techniques of war into play. It's amazing. I mean, and we all have access to this. I mean, most of us don't have to use, law enforcement's different, but most of us don't have to use this in our daily lives or off of the mat in any way. And I think we all need to recognize that and take care of our training partners. Tap early, tap often. Take care of yourself. That's part of having a no ego or a low amount of ego. And take care of them. Like, don't scream if you heel hook someone and you pop their knee. I mean, I see that. I see that in competitions these days, and I'm like, oh man, that's not the way. That's not Kano's vision of creating a more a stronger and more energized society.
I found a lot of times in jiu-jitsu that people who have an ego or who seem to be rolling with a bad ego, a lot of times they don't even realize they're doing it. It's not that they're like jerks or bad people. It's just that they don't have their ego under control completely, and they might not even be aware that they're doing that. What do you think are some of the biggest like self-auditing signs that they could do to help you realize that you're rolling with an ego a little bit if you don't realize it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, just the signs that they're rolling with an ego. I mean, too much power, super heavy breathing. And they won't even allow themselves to like catch the breath and like chill out. Jiu-jitsu is so much more anaerobic than aerobic. It's about moving quickly when you need to, and then periods of rest. And for these people that are, they're just trying to affirm their own self-worth, and it's a stage of development. Rolling with ego. I want to show that I'm good. That's why, I mean, ego is a lot of the reason why blue belt is important. Now, I'm not just a beginner. I know what I'm talking about a little bit. You get your blue belt, you're in the club, you're recognized by somebody you respect, that you know something about this art and have a modicum of effectiveness. And I think that's really valuable to people. I'm getting better. When people are rolling really hard with me, I was rolling with a blue belt. I mean, great guy. He's intelligent, educated, but he was just rolling so hard. Every move was fueled by just like it was a competition. And I was like, dude, just scale it back 20%, at least 20%. You gotta, you're going to be just as effective. Just pull back on the energy expenditure 20%. Saying, hey, relax, buddy. It's okay. But if you can give them something a little bit more quantifiable, they can kind of assess, okay, if that was 100, I could pull back a little bit. And you're not telling them to just be like a limp noodle either. You're giving some actionable advice, which I think that helps get people. It opens a door that you can still do it with less. Everyone, Mr. Harris blew my mind years ago. He was like, you only need 51% control, Roy. Most people want 100% control because it makes them feel better. But, as jiu-jitsu players, we recognize, no, 70% is fine. Let them squirm a little bit. In fact, sometimes you go from like 70% control to maybe, you allow it to dip under 50% so you can create a transition. And allow them to your side mount, you allow them to roll away from you so you can hit a clock choke or maybe take their back. But you're controlling that. And so it's okay to not have 100% control. The people that want 100% control, I mean, they're just young in their journey. And it's up to us as a senior belt to kind of show them, oh, you don't need that. You think you need that, but you don't really need that. Let's try something else. And encourage them.
Roy, something interesting on that note that I discovered. I think I was a purple belt. I started training at Creighton MMA in Atlanta, where my home gym in the United States, under Paul Creighton. And I would always roll with Paul Creighton. What I appreciated about rolling with him is that he would never lock things down completely. He would always give you that little bit of inch to get free, but anywhere you'd go, he'd have something else waiting for you. And over
Yeah.
time, I realized like, man, it's not so much that, I mean, he can of course apply 100 control and keep me completely
Hmm.
pinned. He's
Hmm.
smaller than
Hmm.
he's I'm heavier and taller than he is. But if he wanted to control me and keep me completely locked out and pinned, there'd be nothing I could do about it. But he's also, there's something to him letting you go a little bit so you can go wherever you want to, but there's always something waiting. To me, that's a really
Mm.
high expression of jujitsu. And it made me realize that, yeah, you really, what you're saying here, you don't need 100% control. It's sometimes a game of just transitions and letting the people go to the next thing and understanding that there's a flow and there's a sequence that happens. And as long as your game is expanded upon well, there's always something waiting for them, you know?
Yeah, no, and that's a high level of skill. It's a beautiful expression of the art when you allow people, you let people in the game, you're dominating them. Now, people in the early stages, like first couple of, maybe in the first year, they don't even understand that their best effort can be thwarted by like 52% of your effort. Right? Like it's difficult. Like, no, I'm a human. I'm smart. I'm athletic. There's no way that my best effort could be countered so easily. I remember trying to, Garth the Mountain Taylor. He was like one of my first coaches up in Santa Cruz under Claudio Franza. And one day I was getting better. I was getting to be a decent blue belt. And I told him one day, I was like, oh, you passed my guard like it was nothing, man. And he was like, oh yeah, Roy, that's because I was trying. And he didn't say it in a mean way, but he just let me know. No, no, I was actually like, he was trying. Not only was he trying against me, but he was trying different things. He was putting more effort into doing specific passes that he wanted to work on, and that that ability to kind of let people in, yet keep them at bay, give them hope, be ready at that next step, so you understand. I mean, it takes a lot of awareness to know what that next step is. You let them go from this corner, they run down the street, boom, you're already at the next corner. How'd you get here so fast? Well, I just know where you're going to go. It seems like you're fast, but you're just, and that's just such a beautiful way to allow people to develop their skills. You're not breaking spirits, you're kind of tempering it. You're making it stronger by giving it a little bit of resistance.
That's excellent. Now, Roy, there's an interesting facet to the ego in jujitsu that I'd love to pick your brain on here, and that is that for competitors, I do
Yeah.
feel like to be successful in competition, you do have to have a pretty high level of confidence in yourself. I think that's an important ingredient, is to be confident in yourself and your abilities, and the willingness to obviously impose your will and score your points, win your positions, get your submissions in competition. How does someone balance the ego when they are a highly competitive practitioner?
Mm. Well, I do think for if you're a competitor, you have a lot more on the line. You're going out there in front of people, it's your body. And you end up putting more into everything, more intense training sessions leading up to the competition. Um, Sometimes guys are tight because there's so much ego. Sometimes guys are, some people are at home when they're competing in that moment under pressure. I don't think it's a requirement to have a big ego to be a great competitor, but I do think it helps to have a little more ego than the training mind. The training mind is good. The competition mind requires a little more ego because you need a little bit, like good jujitsu is frustrating and inspiring at the same time, right? So that's how I feel. So when you go out and you compete and you lose, it should burn. Not like, well, give it a go. For a high level, you'll never make it to the highest level of competition if you're like, man, that was cool. He did some great techniques. Acknowledge his techniques, but then you're like, no, but that's not going to happen. You need that competitor mentality. However, the competitor mentality doesn't need to be destructive. I watched a training session with recently with Helena Cravar and Gordon Ryan, and Danaher was calling out stuff. It was like, okay, switching from a position and transitioning into like kind of like corkscrew arm lock. And there was just like they were working on skills. They were working on skills and being able to be serious. Yet, Gordon wasn't cranking anything with Helena. He was letting her, giving her maximum room to kind of figure stuff out, work, but he wasn't going to give it to her if it wasn't good. And it was just like a beautiful. I thought, man, God, he's a good training partner. That guy's a good training partner. And they work on the skills. So apply your ego toward improving your skills, and then you don't need as much ego in the match to overcome that hurdle of getting the victory.
Roy, do you think that there was ever a time in your own journey where your ego got the best of you? Like, can you remember a time specifically where?
So many times, especially with like not tapping in time. As I got older, after 45, okay, so I'm 50 now, right? About 5 years ago, I really started letting it go. Like, if somebody gets me in something, they got to be good. They've got to be good to be able to get something on me, or maybe they just lucked into the position. I mean, that's certainly possible too. But that's like, why deny them the victory? If I get caught in something, I am not going to like, now I'm going to marshal all my energy to escape. Like very diminishing returns. And even if I did escape, I don't feel good about it. I'd apologize. Sorry, that was totally muscle. You had that. I will say that to people. If I'm caught in a bad position and I can squirm out, I'm like, you had that. You could have cranked that. That. And that's good reinforcement to me to be like, no, you should have tapped there, Roy. Maybe that was a mistake. So there are times where I didn't tap in time. I even had once as a blue belt, I got caught in a Kimura, and Claudio tapped for me. He was like, tap. And I didn't tap, but I'm so glad he tapped for me. I still remember it. So tap early, tap often. I haven't always applied that. I've also, there's just many ways where the ego can flare. You're teaching and a high rank, you're a fresh black belt, and like another black belt comes or a brown belt comes, and maybe they're doing the technique slightly differently because they do it slightly differently at their school. Maybe it's your own ego that's like, no, correct this. I did it this way. Maybe it's an exercise in them being able to adapt their skill and notice fine points, but maybe it's your own ego saying, no, we do it this way. You do it this way because you're here. The ego can manifest in all kinds of ways, even in arts like Aikido, where they eliminated competition. The ego will still sneak up on you, and it will be like, oh, I'm pride in your style, pride in your lineage, pride in your dojo. Too much pride to even experiment and see, how well your art does with a different training method or matched up against other martial arts. There's all kinds of ways where the ego can rear its head. I am no stranger to that. I am no exception. But I do have, and ironically, the better you get, the less ego you have, because I've already tapped 10,000 people. And I've been tapped so many times on the way to get that, at least 5,000 times I've tapped, and I've tapped so many people. What's one more? It doesn't matter that much. No one's watching except you, and if you're not judging, if the audience of one doesn't care that much if you tap or not, then you're going to be safe and you're going to have a longer journey in the art.
Roy, something interesting that happens in jiu-jitsu is that we have an ego when we come in, because every guy that comes in through the doors thinks they know how to fight to some degree, and then they realize, oh my God, I don't know anything. And then so then you get real humbled in the beginning as a white belt, and then you kind of get into the mid blue belt, purple belt, and you start to get a little bit more ego. That's when things can start growing back. And then that kind of gets, there's these waves. There's something interesting that happens though, that when the black belt arrives, there can be the black belt ego. right? And that's something that sometimes we see in different people. It's very common. I mean, you've reached, a certain level of mastery, and it's easy to see an ego swell from that. What would your advice be to experienced grapplers who are, say, black belts, who might be still struggling with an ego to some degree?
This is something that is not original to me. Other people have mentioned this. Craig Jones mentioned it. Paul Schreiner mentioned it. After a while, people come to the same conclusion. Give up the tap every now and then. Give up the tap purposely. Let people into the game. Let them tap you. Then when you get caught, it's not such a big deal. It's just another, honestly, they probably can't even tell the difference between when they really caught you and when you let them catch you. And so it just blends in. It's just another thing. It's not like, if they've never tapped you, then that one tap means a lot. It is your failure, right? But if they occasionally catch you and you dominate them most of the time, then it's just like a playful exchange where you're winning most of the time and they recognize your level of skill. The pecking order is still intact. So just give it up every once in a while. And there's something about being able to take the edge off of that initial interaction with somebody when you spar with someone for the first time. I mean, I just taught a Grapplers Retreat, and everyone was really nice, but there were a couple people I was shocked by how hard they came at me. They're like, I gotta get, not I gotta get. They're not I gotta get Roy. They don't expect to get me, but they're like, I'm gonna give him 110%, and let's see how my 110% does. And that's real. That definitely happens, right? So being able to just give up the tap, let them in the game every once in a while. It's not that big of a deal. And if you, for example, in one of those like intense altercations, if you give up the first tap, I did that when it came to CVBJJ, and Anthony and Dan were like, I see what you're doing there. Sometimes you'll let people get the first tap, then you tap them 5 times. But so at the end of the round, they know, okay, he let me in the game, but they know the pecking order, but that initial intensity of like, oh, I'm gonna get him, and we're gonna see how long it takes him to tap me. You just knock that down by at least 20%. So I mean, that is advice I can give everybody. Sometimes give up the first tap, and then you probably have seen their best submission, their best setup, whatever their go-to thing is. Now you know that. You're more well armed with an awareness of what they like to do. And you've taken off that competitive edge. And it's just going to be a much safer training session after that first tap.
That's excellent advice. Roy, kind of to expand on that a little bit, are there any other ways that you like to, or any other things that you like to do or recommend to handle someone who's clearly rolling with an ego and trying to prove something in their role with you? Besides giving up the first tap, are there any other keys that you recommend?
I mean, people respond to different stimuli, right? So sometimes I try not to move fast anymore, in the sense that, oh, they're going really hard, they're going really fast. If I start going really fast too, like the likelihood of a collision that increases. So I want to avoid that. But you can still kind of, like, I'll be soft initially, and usually maybe I'll let them pass my guard, because I don't want that in and out. They're coming here, and then I make a move, and then they respond, and poof, there's some kind of clash. I don't want that. So I'll be soft. I'll sweep them. And if they're still like really struggling, then maybe I put some pressure on. Maybe I put my forearm underneath their back at an angle, and then I turn their head. So there's spinal deviation, and I'm using body weight and pressure on their ribs at a specific angle. And then they're like, "Ugh!" And then you let it go. And they know, like, oh, we could do that all 5 minutes if you wanted to.
Yeah.
So you give them a little taste, but it's not through explosive movement. It's through controlled pressure. and it doesn't have to be punishing. You want them to feel it, but then you back off and then you proceed.
That's great advice. I love that. You know, Roy, I think one of the places, probably the biggest place that we see ego rear its ugly head the most is when someone gets tapped by a lower rank. What do you think are some healthy ways for people out there listening, say some purple belts, some brown belts, who get caught by, say, a blue belt or a talented white belt, if they're not on point? What are some healthy ways to process that so that they don't have an ego start rising up and don't feel the need to like get the guy back and things like that?
Totally. I heard uh, there was a famous black belt who came to the U.S. and he fought another black belt who was really, really tough. And he got tapped, and I guess he slapped the mat and said, "Now you must die." and, and which was kind of half joking, half joking. Um, but so I try to avoid that take. Actually, I say lean into it. Like if somebody gets you, be like, dude, that was clean. That was good. You fought for that. Lean into the compliment to them. They will remember it, because remember, you are the model. You are what they are going to model. I'll never forget. It was Garth Taylor. I think this is a really puts him in a very good light, so I don't mind saying Garth Taylor. I was a blue belt, pretty good blue belt. He was a brown belt, and I just happened to catch him in a choke. He tapped me like a million times, but I happened to catch him in a choke, and I was like, "Whoa!" I think it was the first time only time I've ever tapped him. And he took a minute and he went, "Nope, that was good. That was good." And that was the model that I have modeled after. I'll say, "No, that was good. That was clean. Excellent. You fought for that." That was I wasn't sure if you're going to do it, but you made the correction. Just whatever. That they will mimic that going forward. But if you slap the mat and scream, like nobody wants to roll with that guy. No one wants to be that guy.
No, definitely. Roy, when I was a blue belt, I struggled with ego pretty badly. We were kind of talking earlier how when you first get to jiu-jitsu, you're a white belt, everything you thought you could do is beaten out of you. And then once you start to learn a little bit of the game, enough to get yourself in trouble, your ego starts to swell a little bit. And I remember specifically over time, like I realized that part of my problem I was having was that I was focusing on individual people in my training. So like if I got tapped or I got beat, it was the individual guy that beat me. So then my mindset became, okay, well, in order to get better, I have to be able to beat that guy because he always beats me. And I need to chase him and not let that person get me in order to improve. As a purple belt, I had a thought that really kind of changed that for me a lot. It was I started opening myself up to the idea that it's not necessarily individual people beating me. It's jujitsu that's beating me. And of course we're all vehicles that carry jujitsu. So yes, if someone taps me, that person of course beat me.
Yes.
But they were wielding jujitsu against me, which should just reinforce to me the reason I train it, because it works. Like it works really, really well. So if you tap me, you've proved jujitsu's efficiency. And I started looking at it in that way, of the art being applied against me. And that's really what made me submit, was that the art was properly applied against me. And through that lens, it didn't really matter specifically who did it, whether they were higher ranked or lower ranked than me. Well, what's the difference? Like jujitsu works and it was applied on me and I had to submit. But anyways, that was a thought pattern that helped me along the way a little bit. I started looking at it less as,
dude, that's really powerful. That's really good. We are all vehicles which jujitsu operates through, but don't hate the messenger.
Yeah.
He's carrying the message that we all want to carry. Right. Right. Don't get jelly just because, he happened to do his job. That's what he's there for. And you want him to make a good effort to do that. And yeah, it is frustrating, especially at like the blue belt level where you're like, hey, I know stuff and can do stuff. I can do it against these people. And that's the kind of inspiring and slightly frustrating element of jiu-jitsu. Okay, I know stuff. And this works against most people, yet it doesn't work against this person. Why? Because that person has a lot more experience, or that person knows what you're going for. They've seen that a lot or they used to work with a player, at their old school who did that all the time. So they can sniff it out a mile away, all these things that are kind of a little bit incomprehensible to you at the time, because it's difficult to imagine that jiu-jitsu has that kind of depth, and people can be that experienced in the game, so they know what the thing that you've labored for like 3 to 5 years to do, you've dedicated yourself, you put in so much time, and other people can still it still doesn't work on like the brown or the black belt. Being able to, it's just difficult for people to wrap their mind around. But reframing it like that, no, it's jiu-jitsu that beat me. This person just happens to be the messenger. I think that's really good. I'm glad it helped you, and I think that sharing that can help a lot of people.
I appreciate that, Roy. Thank you. How do you reframe failure so that it feels like progress rather than defeat?
Well, one more thing off the list. Okay, that one more thing that didn't, you had to try. You just can't get too. You just can't get too attached. Observation, what's happening now? Okay, this isn't working. Okay, what else can we do? The thing about jiu-jitsu, it's usually non-obvious. The berimbolo is non-obvious. No, you face the person and you pass their guard with a leg over your shoulder or whatever. I mean, these things are a little more obvious, but then, oh no, I'm going to do a roll, like a lateral circular roll to your back, grabbing your belt and working around the perimeter of your body. It's not obvious. Being able to pass the guard by doing a big back step. You're moving forward, but you're stepping backwards. Like once you can kind of like see some of these things and address them, then you're like, oh, well, it must be something that's not obvious, because the obvious things are easy to stop and they're easy to do. Right. So it just kind of opens up your mind to like, okay, maybe that isn't the answer. And just allow yourself other possibilities. There is a kind of a marketing course. This is an aside, but like this is, I purchased this rather expensive marketing course on, and doing like Facebook ads for books. Their thing was, you must test, because you have to test taglines, you have to test images, you have to test all these things and then combine them, because the thing you think is clever may not resonate. The thing you think is going to be great may not hit. You have to apply the scientific method. You have to apply, it to a pressure test and see if people actually do respond. So just because you can't imagine it right now doesn't mean the answer isn't there. It's just that answer did not work, and let's move on to the next thing. And so it's actually, failure is actually a favor to you in eliminating an option that's not going to serve you that well going forward.
That kind of takes us down a different line of thinking here too. And that is that I think one of the worst symptoms that people suffer who have an ego problem is that they keep themselves only in their A game when they're training. They never explore other stuff because they're thinking, well, if I'm not so good at that position. So if I kind of explore that and I make a mistake, this guy's going to tap me. Well, it's like, okay, well, congratulations. Now you're never going to evolve that position. You're not going to leave your A game. You'll have a real tight A game, and congratulations. But, man, it really does hinder your growth overall, right?
Oh, absolutely. And then the ego comes into it, because they overextend themselves preserving that position. Because if they get out of that position, okay, now they're hosed. And I've seen it many times. I know guys that melt. If you pass their guard, they're like, I don't have good mount escapes. Or they only have one move, and they know that that one move that they like to do. Right. So sometimes people mentally fold. And that's another reason why you should embrace failure. And, there was a great guy. He was a prison guard. He was a former bodybuilder, Stan Kendrick, and just really great role model, early training partner. He was always ahead of me. he was a big purple belt. I mean, he's a big dude. And I was a blue belt, and he was trying something. He was either trying a sweep or some kind of thing. And I'd never tapped him legitimately, but I tapped him, like reversed into an arm lock off a Kimura. And he tapped early, but he was like, tap, 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 tap. And he was like, oh man, that was good. That was good. And I could tell he was trying something. And again, you need to have those training partners that you can model and be like, oh man, he was trying. Okay, that didn't work. You are going to fail. As Danaher says, like, techniques when they're born, they are weak and feeble. You must nurture them. You must feed them. You must protect, paraphrasing slightly, but it's like you need to understand that to really have a good understanding of a technique, you have to understand where it applies and where it doesn't apply, and you have to test those boundaries. And failure is kind of a certainty. Now, if you don't have those training partners that you can model, you should be that training partner that other people can model. Embrace vulnerability. It makes you much more relatable. I think that's one reason why people liked my stuff early on. I posted my losses on YouTube in an era where no one was doing that. That is what makes us human, and it makes the victories so much better.
Absolutely. Yeah. The other thing with the other problem with someone that's only sticking to their A game and not putting themselves at risk by exploring other things and testing things out is that, especially now with the growth of jiu-jitsu over the last 15 years or so, man, there are thousands of people walking this earth that can drag you kicking and screaming out of your A game and like walk right through your A game. And if you don't have good follow-ups and you don't have depth to your defenses and things like that, because you never leave your comfort zone, man, those people are going to maul you. And so ultimately, if your goal is to not get tapped and to play your A game and win rounds and stuff, what's going to happen when someone who can take you out of that game does so? You really haven't done yourself any favors. That's why it's so important to explore and test things and leave your comfort zone so you can build up other areas and other systems.
Absolutely. And just extending that off the mat. Hey, just because you're a subject matter expert doesn't mean you're great at all other things. You can be an expert in one realm, and you can have whatever, a killer guard. Someone passes your guard. Maybe your side mount escapes aren't that great. Maybe your guard is so good you don't have to do side mount escapes very often anymore. But you can absolutely improve, and in fact, you make that. I like to let people pass my guard, and then I can work on my side mount escapes and my sweeps. I have a couple sweeps that they wouldn't be as good if I didn't let people pass my guard. You have to allow yourself to be vulnerable. And then just by doing that, I mean, we say it, but by doing it and getting comfortable with the discomfort of like, I'm a little bit out of my depth here. I'm not sure where I'm going, what I'm looking for. You'll discover something along the way. And just that you can carry that feeling of not quite knowing what to do to other areas, maybe business. I'm not really good with Facebook ads. Maybe I should hire someone who's an expert. I'm a little bit out of my depth here. Maybe my graphic design skills aren't that great. Maybe I need to hire somebody. It's okay to admit that. And ultimately you'll end up with a better product, whether that's your jiu-jitsu game or whatever you're putting out on the market. It's important to just make every element as good as you can make it. And you're not going to be able to have an A+ in all areas immediately. It's a process. There's craftsmanship when you're developing your game.
Roy, what you just said there kind of brings me to an interesting question. So something in this has to do with like ego and subject matter experts and also off things that are off the mats in a way. One thing that happens a lot in martial arts, not just jiu-jitsu, but people come to martial arts for self-improvement a lot of the time. That's what they're looking for. And they can oftentimes see their instructor or their teacher as a sort of a guru in not only the art, but sometimes it becomes like, man, I want to come to him for life advice. I want to come to him for relationship advice. I want to come to him. Next thing you know, you're supposed to be just teaching jiu-jitsu and you got people asking about parenting and relationship and life advice. And for some instructors, that can grow an ego too. That can be like, okay, man, well, now I'm much more than just a jiu-jitsu teacher. I'm this life guru for the student of mine. Is that something you've ever battled with as far as like people coming to you for advice that's really outside of what the purpose of them coming to you in the first place was? And how do you balance that as a teacher?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Tons of times, I mean, I remember, uh, back when I had my academy, I mean, this girl came in and she was just, I remember her being crying in a fetal position on the floor of my office over I don't even remember what it was over. It was a relationship thing or something. And I was just like, I'm not equipped to handle this. This is like I'm not a counselor. I am a jujitsu instructor. I'm like maybe a responsible adult. Yeah, someone with a little bit of experience. But when it comes to having people that are really, um, you can be like an outside advisor, but I think it's good to say, I had this martial arts mentor. He said my favorite thing to say is, "I don't know." Uh, right? It's like, I don't know that much about that. I do know about this other related field or whatever. I'm not sure what to tell you. I would recommend, maybe explore this or explore that, but I don't really have much. It's okay. That actually gives your students or your friends or whoever more confidence in the replies that you do give. The advice that you do offer, they can have more confidence in it because you wouldn't be giving it if you didn't know. So when it comes to, relationship advice, I do, for my, like, 25 affiliates, often when they call me, it's about, and I'm available to any of my affiliates whenever they need me. That's part of the deal. They don't need me that often, but if they do need me, I am accessible and I will get back to them. And usually it's about, a human dynamic. Like, oh, we invited a guy for a seminar, but it's not selling. How do I break the news to this guy? I have a student that's doing this. They started training over there, and then they, some kind of like weird behavior. That I can absolutely do. Because it's a path I've been down. Sensei, one who has gone before. So when it comes to anything professional in jujitsu, any kind of HR dynamic, any kind of student teacher dynamic, um, loyalty stuff. Yeah, you can give advice, but I think it's good to be able to say, yeah, I'm not really sure about that, or just be a sympathetic ear, but you're not a guru. Americans in this era, we kind of we don't respect expertise as much as we need to. There are people that dedicate their entire lives to a particular subject, and they have depth in that knowledge field that you cannot even imagine. And we kind of like brush that aside because there's been a flattening with YouTube, or I mean, with just in general with the internet. You can access people very easily, and you can do, and um, you can do your own research, so to speak. But do you really know how to contextualize that research? Do you really know, it's okay to recognize that you're out of your depth and to have a little bit of humility. You are the white belt in that field. Don't, just like we look down on people that fake their rank. Don't fake your rank in other subjects.
That's a great analogy. Yeah, great analogy. It's an interesting thought too, Roy, because I mean, obviously, like when you're a teacher and you're helping someone improve their lives and their health and their self-confidence and all that through jujitsu, it is. I mean, you are in a position where you could be an effective mentor to someone that's younger and less experienced, as long as they're coming to you for reasonable things. Like if a young
Sure.
guy, had maybe advice about what career path, and you just want to kind of pick your brain as a school owner, as an entrepreneur.
Hmm.
Then yeah, of course, that puts you in a really cool position to be able to help someone and maybe give a little bit of guidance. But I love what you said, though, is that you do have to understand your own limitations. And if someone's coming to you for something a little heavier than what's normal,
Hmm.
having the ability to say, hey, listen, I don't know, like you said, I think is really important. But there is some people that have that ego where it's like, oh man, I'm like I'm not just a jujitsu coach or a martial arts instructor. I'm a life guide. and it starts kind of building them up in their head. So
Oh,
I know that's something that a lot of instructors are approached with, is they think they're going to just be teaching arm bars and jujitsu and stuff, but then all of a sudden it becomes deeper, some of the things that people bring to them.
all the time. And it's natural to kind of like, okay, this person, I mean, you're essentially a tribal leader. You have a group that comes to you, you have your tribe, you are the leader, people look to you, and it's natural that they view you as an elder. But just, the leaders need a little bit of humility on, what you're good at, what you're not good at, and just, you know, you can have more than one lane that you are competent in. Certainly, we're not just good at one thing, but it can get a little dangerous. It could definitely get a little dangerous.
Yeah. Yeah. Roy, there's something you said in passing there, minor detail I wanted to zoom in on. You said the word sensei and then you translated it to one that has gone before. Is that what sensei means?
I believe so.
Oh, I had no idea. That's super cool. One that has gone before. That's really cool.
Yeah.
I had no idea that was the meaning. I always I've known the word sensei since I was a little kid doing martial arts, but I never actually knew what the actual translation was. That's super cool.
Yeah, it's interesting that the integration of like Japanese words and the like kohai senpai. Those are also, sensei who's a teacher, but then you have like kohai who's kind of like a younger student, and the senpai who's the older student. And that's another like powerful dynamic in Japanese society. Upperclassmen, lowerclassmen, and that kind of like, that's a lighter hierarchy, but I think that is important in martial arts, and it's important in societies, but you don't want to abuse the hierarchy in any way, whether senpai kohai, upperclassmen lowerclassmen, or teacher. I think it's important to respect. Dude, it's all about respect. It's all about respect. When I'm just about to publish this private lesson that I did at the Kodokan, and we start the lesson with a bow to Kano, to Jigoro Kano, and then to our teacher of the day, and then we end it with respect. And that's what it's all about. If your ego is so big that you don't want to tap, you're not respecting yourself. If you don't tap, or if you don't let go when they tap, then you're not respecting them. You need to respect both. And that's all people want. I mean, it boils down. There's a great kind of the patriarch of CVBJJ, Glenn Hegstead, very interesting guy. Some amazing stories from him. He got kidnapped by like Colombian paramilitary rebels, and there's a whole National Geographic locked up abroad on him with that. He's traveled. He's written several books on his motorcycle adventures around the world. He said, the thing that unites us all, wherever you go in the world, respect. If you give respect, you get respect. And the dojo, the mat, is an environment where we can give respect and receive respect, and it's earned. It's a different kind of currency. It has nothing to do with money. There's a lot of controversy these days about people kind of buying belts or whatever. That's always happened. Some cases are more prominent, some cases are less prominent. But what the belt is worth. How much you sacrificed. How good you are. The people that you've actually legitimately beaten. And it has nothing to do with knowledge. It has to do with your own personal experience. And that's a truth that people cannot take anything away from. That's the highest form of truth. So respect the art, respect yourself, respect your training partners, respect people outside the mat, and it solves so many problems in this life.
Roy, do you think that the growth of the sport has pulled us away from our martial arts roots? So some of the ideologies that come with a martial art, and if so, what do you think are some of the biggest detrimental effects of that?
I do. when Nick and I finished the lesson in Japan, it was, of course, that was more of an introductory lesson, but I'm telling you, I learned things in that lesson at the Kodokan. Dynamics of how the body moves, and there were some insights there. I mean, I've been training a long time, but I still learned some things. And we just mentioned that, like, that the modern jujitsu scene, or your average class, just it lacks something. It lacks something. It's very technique oriented, heavy on technique. That's good, but some of the underlying principles, understanding the history of an art, the evolution that brought it to us, understand the past so you can really know the present moment that you're in and can shape the future. It's not like that was then, it has nothing to do with now. It absolutely has something to do with now and where we're going. The principles um, espoused, the kind of, they kept saying it's judo is influenced by like a uniquely Japanese mindset, and it's true. Their concept of kaizen, continuous improvement, improving things. And this is something that I really have been thinking about for about a year. The it's continuous improvement. Okay, for example, I'm really into headphones, and this is kind of like a little side thing. I love headphones, and I love listening to different kinds of headphones, Bluetooth, wired, understanding. So when they develop headphones, like, for example, a Japanese company, they will improve the design. They use better, they improve the design, they get feedback, they start working on different elements. Eventually you improve everything so much you can't do anything more there. So then, okay, let's improve our manufacturing process. Let's improve our shipping process, our delivery. Let's improve the packaging. It extends out. Continuous improvement just extends out. And that is a uniquely Japanese idea, where it's like it becomes unnecessarily detailed, so that the experience goes from adequate and functional to something that's really exquisite. And I think the way they have continuously developed judo, thought about judo, expounded judo, expanded judo, categorized judo, um, like everything we're doing is contained in judo, and it's beautiful. And there were just so many lessons about principles, about physics, the scientific concepts, the history. I felt like a modern, like, BJJ class is kind of just warm-ups, technique, sparring. There was a lack of, it kind of illustrated the shortcomings of our approach. And obviously it goes beyond that. Like, I'm not seeing as much respect these days in the modern competition scene. Some guys yes, some guys no. I'm really, a lot of it is ego. A lot of it's like, hey, I'm going to get famous. I'm going to heel hook this guy. I'm going to rip his knee, and I'm going to get famous. And then my life is going to be good. You can be a world champion. You can still not be able to afford a sandwich or a cup of coffee. That has, it has something to do with your success, but not everything. Right. And I think that some of these old values of respect, um, of etiquette is just an intelligent way of getting along with other people. And and also just honoring your training partners, your tribe, not abusing your position. Just there's so many elements of traditional martial arts that I feel are that could be incorporated to improve the culture of modern jiu-jitsu. Plus, as Steve Maxwell said, a lot of these modern guys, they know what they're doing, but none of that would really be used in a fight. Because I mean, he did the Gracie challenge. He said the last time he did it, he was 45 years old. Wow. And he only did it because Hoist was there that day. And he had to fight this guy. And it took him 45 minutes to dispatch it, because he was like a wrestler boxer. And it was much bigger. But he did it. And Frank Shamrock said a long time ago, fights are easy. Fighting is simple. Submission grappling is sophisticated and beautiful, but fighting is simple and easy. Close your fist, punch. That's the distraction. So a lot of the modern game of like Imanari roll into, some kind of Ashi entanglement into heel hook. It can be good in that context. And I'm not saying it's impossible for it to work on the street, but there's a little bit of that street readiness that is lacking in modern submission grappling competitions.
Yeah. I definitely agree with you on that. I think there are a lot of very talented grapplers out there that maybe have never done training where someone's trying to punch them, and like, controlling distance and understanding the ranges of the guard, for example, if someone's trying to hit you. And it's really a shame, because I mean, if you're already such a experienced and knowledgeable and capable grappler, it doesn't take that much to add that, to add that to your knowledge. And you've already got all the working pieces and all the mechanics for the most part. It's just understanding how to put it together when someone's trying to hit you now. And yeah, you do also have to look honestly sometimes that man, if I did get attacked in the street, and thankfully, most of us are never going to have to use our jiu-jitsu in a real situation. I don't think. I think for most of us, we use our jiu-jitsu exclusively in the academy and at competitions, and that's right. It. But if you ended up in a situation where someone did attack you, you would have to take a realistic look. Like, okay, maybe I don't want to do that position because my face is like literally right, like smiling at the guy above me as he's punching me in the face. I don't want to, you do have to kind of analyze the techniques that are your go-to things. And I think you find that like most of the most basic, fundamental, simple stuff is what works in self-defense. And so, yeah, it's just a matter of looking at it and learning those concepts,
Absolutely. I mean, they have all the attributes. Let's just bring that. And that's not to bag on like old school. I mean, old schools is the best way. Dude, it's one way. I love the expansion. I don't know if I mentioned this in the past, but there's I see some parallels between jiu-jitsu today and origami.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. I want to hear this.
So there's on public broadcasting, they had a documentary called The Art of the Fold. And it talked about this Japanese origami master who he could take a piece of paper and he could fold it into different animal shapes, but he would also like impart kind of a little bit of life into it. Like he would bend the paper in such a way that it was simple and elegant, and he could do it. But then he had an entire generation of students who learned origami under him, and then they took it farther. And then there's another generation that learned from those people. And these days, people are generating origami designs on a computer. They use computer-aided design to mark out folds, and they can do the most complex things. They can make dragons. They can do shapes that you feel are absolutely impossible, right? But if you're just sitting down at a table one day and find a piece of paper there, do you need that? Do you need the computer? Do you need no, you just want to be able to do something practical, functional in that moment. You need to entertain a child. You show them, you fold a crane, you fold a penguin, you do something like it's practical, it's functional. You can use it right off the table, one piece of paper. You don't need the computer aided design to do something super exotic, but it's nice to know that that's possible. So if anyone out there hasn't seen that, which probably most of the jiu-jitsu audience has not, The Art of the Fold, and tell me if you can see any parallels between our arts.
I'm going to watch it tonight. I'm going to go find it tonight, and I'll definitely send a report to you for sure. Yeah, that's very interesting. That's super cool. Roy, you've been on this is your fourth appearance on the show. So you've played the pummel game multiple times. You're a 3-time pummel champion. So I won't put you through the full pummel game again. Okay. But I do have one question I want to throw your way. It's a question that's floating around the internet right now. It's been a hot debate from not just in jiu-jitsu, but from kind of all over the place. Mm-hmm. In your opinion, could one silverback gorilla defeat 100 unarmed men?
No,
Okay.
no, no. I think it would be kind of a, yeah, I think he would be weighed down. I think there would definitely be some people that take the brunt of it. Like those first couple guys,
Some
they would get it
fodder.
bad.
Yeah.
They would
Yeah.
get it bad, but they would distract him in the front, and a couple guys would tackle him from the rear, and a couple guys on each limb. So I do feel like, yeah, there would be not everyone would survive, but I think the mass of the men would overcome him.
It's kind of like when you see like a bigger bug wander into an anthill. That's eventually they're just all over them. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. They cover them, and then they vibrate quickly to
Yeah.
heat them
Yeah.
up.
Man, that was crazy. I was watching that not long ago about the honeybees doing that to those murder hornets. Man, alive. I
Yes,
had no idea. Nature's absolutely crazy. The
nature
stuff.
is metal, without a
Nature
doubt.
is Metal. So I have one of my favorite Instagram accounts as well. Yeah. Nature's Metal. Absolutely. Roy, man, in closing, what are some of your major goals for 2025? What are some things you hope to accomplish this year? We've talked about your excursion to Puerto Rico, to Costa Rica that's coming up.
Mhm.
You've done some really cool traveling so far. What else is on the horizon for you this year?
Yeah, it's been an amazing year. I am headed to in at the end of September. I'm heading to Australia for the first time. So
Oh,
I have a
awesome.
new affiliate over there. I'm gonna go check in and do a kind of a private seminar with them, and then I will have one public seminar. I believe it's going to be October 4th over in Australia. So anyone listening in Australia, I would love it if you could join us on the mat. And then at the end of October, one of my black belts, Rick Ellis from the Art of Skill, is doing a kind of a major camp. It's a little bit of an experiment. He's going big with the Old Grappler Summit. He booked an incredible location in San Diego, and I will be teaching there alongside Clark Gracie and Miles Lucas with the Wim Hof method. So we will be doing an Old Grappler Summit, and then finally this book. I don't want to give too much away, but we're interviewing first generation masters, and we're going to come up with a book that I feel is going to be one of the most beautiful pieces of art I've ever been associated with. So far, it's looking really good. I'm very proud to be associated with this project. I'm doing it in conjunction with Josh Gold of Aikido Journal, and we're looking to launch that in December, and hopefully it will be delivered to people in early 2026. So that project, which we're keeping under wraps a little bit, we're going to be presenting it to Bernardo Faria when he comes out to San Francisco. He's doing a seminar at my affiliate's gym. We're gonna present it to him and see if he can also get behind it. We're really excited about it and can't wait to share this with the world. I feel like it'll be a real contribution to the art.
Well, folks, unfortunately, we're fresh out of time. Roy, it is always a great pleasure to get to talk with you, man. You bring such great insight to the table every time you're here. You're always welcome back anytime you want to come back on the show.
I appreciate the invitation. Always like our conversations, Ryan. Thank you.
Thank you, Roy. I appreciate that. For anyone out there that wants to keep up with Roy, it's real easy to do so. He's active on pretty much all forms of social media. He's active on Facebook. Instagram is Roy Dean _. His YouTube channel is Roy Dean. If you guys type his name in, you'll find the channel. Subscribe and make sure you hit the bell icon to get notified when he adds new videos, because he adds a lot of content and it's all excellent. His website is roydean.com. That's a great place to keep up with all his instructionals and seminars and everything else he's got going on. Like he said, he's going to be in Australia, guys, for the first time. So we have a lot of listeners in Australia, actually. So make sure you guys head over to roydean.com and get the info on when and where that's going to be, and don't miss it. San Diego in October with the Old Grapplers Retreat, and that's something we just had Rick Ellis on the show last month. So you guys, if you want to check that out, it's in San Diego in October, and Roy's going to be part of that as well. November, guys, the Costa Rica camp with Heroes Academy. It's a really great humanitarian effort that they're doing out there for the local community, and obviously tremendous jiu-jitsu. So if you guys are able to get in on that, you don't want to miss it. Keep your eyes peeled for his book coming out next year. Right now, the details are slightly limited because it's an important project that they want to make sure that they've got everything on point before they release it. But it's going to be releasing next year in January, so you guys make sure that you've paid attention there. If you guys can't make it to any of Roy's camps or seminars or anything like that, you can learn from him anywhere in the world here at BJJFanatics.com. He's one of our best-selling instructors on the entire platform. He's got countless instructionals on every topic you can imagine. So head over to BJJFanatics.com, type in Roy Dean, and you'll find him there. And that's going to do it for this episode, everybody. I really appreciate you tuning in. Please stay tuned for the next episode of the BJJ Fanatics podcast.